The music streaming industry is very competitive, and with the presence of three tech giants like Apple, Google, and Amazon, this arena has become even more interesting. Despite this, Spotify is by far the most successful audio streaming platform when it comes to active and paid users using the solution. As of June 2022, Spotify had more than 430 million subscribers, of which 31% of its users are paying for its global paid streaming music subscription. To put things into perspective, Apple's 80 million or Amazon's 60 million subscribers combined form less than a third of Spotify's entire subscriber base. That's massive. Spotify is ahead in terms of total subscribers, but it's not stopping here. The company is now targeting 1 billion users, but the path to reaching 1 billion users, as you might imagine, is not easy. The market share of Spotify has declined from 34% in 2019 to 31% in 2022, owing to platforms like Amazon Music, YouTube Music, both of which are growing much faster than Spotify and are gradually eroding Spotify's market share. Spotify's growth rate is a lot lesser than these other competitive platforms. This could be because Spotify has a larger base than the other two, but the companies in the fray that Spotify is competing with are profitable and generate much higher cash flows than Spotify, right? So these companies have enough cash at their disposal to keep investing into this music business and keep expanding their products. If we consider all of this, the question becomes, will Spotify be able to defend its current business and market share and remain relevant to its users? This is what we'll cover in this video. First, let's start with a short walk down memory lane. The music industry has changed tremendously since Thomas Edison invented the phonograph in the 1900s. Using a phonograph, music could be recorded and played. That revolutionized how music was heard that time. Naturally, with every new invention comes a new way of making money and managing businesses. With music getting recorded, someone needed to manage now the distribution of music, and these companies got set up called record labels. Record labels handled aspects like recording, creating physical records, inventory, payments, and distribution. Also, record labels paid the artists that created the music. For artists, partnering with record labels made sense, right? Because they never had to worry, since the record label managed the entire production of their creativity. Growing dependence on record labels allowed these record labels to control the entire market. The reason being that they control the distribution. Want to get your song on the radio? Need a record label. Want to be on Billboard 100? Label. Are your songs in a commercial or in the movies? Well, you guessed it, you need a record label. By the 2000s, Sony, Universal, and Warner, the three biggest label players, control 80% of the record label market. As of 2021, these players command about 70% of the market share and still very, very relevant. In the early 2000s, the internet started to become prevalent. With the support of this internet, a company called Napster developed a P2P or peer sharing network. Because of Napster, consumers like you and I could now download MP3 songs for free and share it with our friends, right? Gone were the days of needing to buy an entire album for $30 when you could easily cherry pick one song that you like and download that song onto your computer for no cost at all. The outcome was devastating for these big three record labels. Since Napster was founded in 1999, the music industry revenue decreased over time. By 2014, the overall revenue declined by more than 50%. It wasn't until streaming took off that the industry revenue started to increase again. The music industry players, both artists and record labels, filed a lot of lawsuits against Napster, citing revenue loss. And then eventually, Napster ceased operations in 2001 after losing a wave of lawsuits and filed for bankruptcy in June 2002. However, Napster completely altered how you and I listen to music. They altered the consumer behavior. Even though it was out of business, there was a void to fill, and that void was filled by a company called Apple when it launched iTunes in 2003. With iTunes, you could now pick any song that you wanted to listen to and pay just 99 cents for it. However, this still did not stop the entire piracy wave that had started with Napster. iTunes was limited to Apple's products and not everybody wanted to pay for songs that you can download completely for free. You must be thinking that after the launch of iTunes, the music industry's revenue must have increased since then. In reality, it did. In fact, it kept declining further. There was a probable solution to this problem. What if the world's music were provided to every user for free? Spotify's founder, Daniel Ek, was aware of this situation, and in one interview he even mentioned that piracy cannot be done away with completely. But not everybody wants to download music illegally if a cheaper and better solution is made available to them to listen to the music that they like. And that was the idea that soon started Spotify. Spotify witnessed Napster's rapid rise and fall, so it wanted to ensure it did everything by the book. Daniel Ek started the company in Sweden and approached European labels first, which didn't have the same kind of triopoly structure that we saw earlier of the record labels like they did in the US. These labels were dwindling in size and were looking for distribution and reach. And here was this startup offering them cash for licensing deals with possible massive distribution opportunity. Even with the favorable setup, it took Ek 2 years to sign deals with all of these European record labels. The Spotify founder realized that getting licenses in the US was difficult, so the company initially stayed away from the US market completely. Also, with the experience of dealing with the European record labels, Spotify realized two key things that helped their journey going forward. First, that royalties must be paid to the record label every time a track is played. These royalties amount to 80% of the total subscription amount that you pay to Spotify. The record labels keep 50% of the royalties and distribute the rest to other players in the ecosystem, including the artists. Unfortunately though, the artists were still on the losing end. They usually got a meager 8 to 10% of the subscription price that was paid to these record labels. Think about this. From your monthly subscription of $10, the collection of artists just receive $1. And that then gets split among the entire band individuals, right? So how much do you actually earn? Reports suggest that artists get paid anywhere between $0.006 to $0.0084 for each stream. This means that an artist will receive only $8,400 for every 1 million streams. So to become extremely rich as a musician, you need to really become popular. The second learning for Spotify was that Spotify couldn't charge more from the subscribers, as it knew that consumers would quickly shift to other methods of acquiring music which were lower cost, right? You saw that with the piracy movement. So then the question for Spotify was, how do they make money and keep sustaining their model? It decided to address the problem of revenue generation in three ways. First, create the distribution and reduce your costs by negotiating with the record labels. Second, monetize the user's attentions via ads as well, so you can make more money. And third, convert these free ad listening users to opt for the paid subscription. Spotify decided to focus on distribution first. That was very important. With more and more users, the company gets more and more negotiating leverage with these record labels and thus reduces costs. The better the negotiation power, the better the chance of them making more and more profits. But how would you get more people onto your platform, especially when you're just starting? Spotify decided to build a huge content library and follow a freemium model. To build its content library, Spotify spent close to $10 billion between 2008 and 2015 to acquire different rights for music. This strategy worked in the company's favor. By the time Spotify came to the US, it already had over 1 million subscribers. And now, 10 years later, the company has more than 430 million monthly active users, a massive number. Also, Spotify worked on retaining users by providing a wow experience. Spotify has really good data on what the user is listening to. And so based on its analysis, Spotify came up with a daily mix, a way to discover playlists where users can select songs based on their interests of known and unknown artists. Also, Spotify allowed users to create individual playlists and share them with their family, friends, and network. Users love this entire feature. This encourages more and more artists to then publish their work on Spotify, and that brings again more users. It's a loop that has worked very well. 20 years ago, there were only 1.5 million songs on the platform, and today there are 22 million songs that have been uploaded on Spotify. Last year, about 60,000 new songs kept being uploaded daily. Combined with the artist's ability to be discovered with a distribution of 430 million users, newer artists now feel motivated to be on Spotify, and they have to make sure that they launch on the platform. Look at the share of the big three labels in the music streaming market. It's declining. This means that artists are choosing not to work with these massive record label giants, but instead directly heading to a platform like Spotify to publish their songs. And this further reduces the costs for the company and makes it a better business model. Second, users won't mind seeing some ads, right? Since they can access the entire catalog of music for free. Spotify generates about 10% of its revenue through advertising, whereas 60% of Spotify's paying users start using the ad-supported freemium option and then eventually upgrade to the premium subscription. Provide content for free, get users on the platform, provide them the best experience, and then turn them eventually into paid subscribers. The cycle has now been completed, and this is what Spotify has always wanted to do and has achieved over the last few years. But despite all of this, Spotify's margins are not that great. Of course, they've improved as this loop has come into the picture, but compared to other technology companies where margins are in the range of 35 to 40% at net profit levels, Spotify is much lower. And this is what the company is now focused on. Now, unless the royalty payment to these labels goes away or is significantly reduced, it's difficult for the company to improve margin. So they have two options to consider. First, get all artist-specific deals directly on the platform, or second, venture into new audio streaming option. Option one is not really a viable option, right? It's very difficult. And you can consider that new artists will lean towards Spotify, but there are already existing deals, like, for example, Metallica's record deals are with the Warner Group. Now, why will the group offload those deals unless they were forced to sell? So, royalty payments can't really become zero or near zero for the company. That is why Spotify is looking at the second option, which is other audio streaming option. From their research, what Spotify seems to have concluded is that podcasts are the next big thing for them. Over the past decade, podcast listenership has tripled and continues to grow strongly. From the consumer's perspective, it makes perfect sense to consume content via podcasts, right? Unlike video, where more than often people need to be seated to enjoy, podcasts can be listened to literally anywhere, while driving, walking, exercising, traveling to work, all of these different areas. From the streaming platform's perspective, it makes perfect sense to get into podcasts. Apart from the adoption, the ad revenue per active user per hour from podcasts is much lower than other established channels such as radio or TV. The hypothesis is that if podcasts grow and the platform for streaming podcasts becomes established, it will yield a better revenue per user per hour for Spotify. And this is exactly what the company is banking on. Spotify was essentially a nobody in the podcast market even 3 years ago, as they had a catalog of just 185,000 podcasts, significantly lagging behind the largest player in the industry at that time, which was Apple. Today, Spotify is the number one platform for podcasts in 60 plus countries, including the US. And they boast of 3.2 million podcasts on their platform. Spotify's recent acquisitions of famous podcasters like Joe Rogan prove the fact that Spotify is really focused on this audio streaming option. It's experimenting with podcasts like other platforms are experimenting with feeds. Users can scroll through the podcast snippets, increasing the content discovery and making it much easier for different podcasts to be heard by other folks. This is what TikTok mastered. If content discovery is exceptional, even unknown creators feel like they can make it big too. And this again starts that loop where creators come back, use the platform more and more users come back again to listen to different kinds of podcasts. Spotify introduced a discovery feature for podcasts recently, like how TikTok has. It's clear that Spotify is very serious about podcasting, and it's trying to put itself in a position to be the Facebook of podcast advertising. It will be like the radio where the brand creates an ad and then it's played on the podcast, except much more targeted than the radio, since your phone pinpoints your exact location and has your preset preferences so that you can be served the best ad possible for you. There is a possibility that podcasts could be a self-service advertising product on Spotify where brands choose demographics and get the criteria that they want to maximize their ad dollars, like for example Google ads or Facebook ads. This would be a win-win for podcasters, brands, and of course for Spotify. Spotify positions advertising as its growth engine now in the future. And the companies that find themselves competing against this kind of ad spend are the well-positioned advertising triopoly, which is again Google, Amazon, and Facebook. To put things into context, in 2021, these three companies grabbed more than 50% of advertising spending in the US. Social media platforms monetize users' time and attention, and that's exactly what Spotify will position itself as and compete against all of these tech giants in the ad industry. The business war is intensifying, and Spotify has an interesting strategy to compete against all of these big companies. If you like this video, you might also like our video on the buy now pay later industry and how another company called Affirm, how their business model works. The link is in the description, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Vested for more such content.